Do you ever hear people talking about their side hustles and think, why not me? Well, what's stopping you? We worked with HubSpot to create a database of 100 side hustle ideas that you can start now. Everything from design and real estate to public speaking and wellness. There's something in there for everyone. Plus, we cover the skills you need and the investment you'll probably have to make to get started. Ready to break out of your 9 to 5? Go to HubSpot.com/THDS to download for free.
Good morning, everyone. It's Friday, December 20th. I'm John Weigell with Mark Dent, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. "2024 was the year of betting. Elections, sports, meme coins, you name it. The US had its absolute fill of bets to take. It's become easier than ever to gamble in America, and some companies like DraftKings and Kalshi are raking it all in. So how much of a problem is this incessant betting, and how do we all get here to start with? We'll get to that in a little bit, but first, let's give you the news in business and tech. To start us off today, we're talking about Amazon. Amazon's not exactly having their best holiday season right now, as the company faces potentially its largest strike in history. Thousands of workers in the US and Germany walked right off the job days before the holidays set in, and union negotiations didn't exactly go as planned, so expect some package delays if you're looking to get that gift in time for Christmas. Mark, what do you make of this walkout? It seems like Amazon's going through a bit of a tumultuous time with their workers.
I think it's not surprising. We've heard about Amazon's conditions in some of their warehouses for a long time. I know that workers have complained about pay. They've complained about the structure and like all the different kind of tasks they have to complete. And this is basically America's one of its largest employers, right?
Yeah.
Outside of Walmart, outside of government, Amazon's right up there. And so, you're going to have a fair amount of people who are going to be unsatisfied with the working conditions. And we're in an era where going on strike is just something that people do now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, Boeing obviously had the huge strike this year.
Mm-hmm.
There's been major strikes that have been averted just at the last minute in some huge industries. And if you look up to the north, Canada's Royal Mail, they've been on strike for a while. I think they're going to get back to it, I think, as of this week. But yeah, this is just what's going on. And I know what Amazon is saying, that it probably won't affect your packages, but it probably will. How do they know that?
Right.
There's thousands of people who aren't working.
Right. They have no idea, I'm sure. And, we were talking earlier this week about Amazon problems that they're facing with injuries at the workplace, which apparently they underreport, and they don't really release accurate reporting based off of that too. So, there's a lot of elements here, and kind of what you were saying before, a lot of companies are experiencing strikes or near strikes. UPS almost got into a strike this year, which would have been a huge problem industry-wide for the shipping industry. So Amazon's kind of right up there with them right now. So especially for these weeks around the holidays, they definitely picked the perfect time to stop working if they wanted to bend some ears.
Yeah, absolutely. And according to courts, there's going to be around 2.2 billion deliveries during this holiday season. So that's how big of a deal it is.
Oh, geez, that's more than I can fathom. Next up, to OpenAI. OpenAI has gone a bit retro. The company is letting users chat with its AI bot over the phone now with the launch of 1-800-ChatGPT. US callers will get 15 minutes free per month, and international users can message ChatGPT via WhatsApp. I know what you're thinking. Apparently, Sam Altman came out today as well and said that they are not using your voice for data, but who knows? From there, we go to chain restaurants. It's been a real tough year for chain restaurants. We've talked about Red Lobster being bankrupt, et cetera, et cetera. But Darden Restaurants had a solid quarter, and that's largely due to two of its brands, Olive Garden, with same-store sales growth of 2%, and Longhorn Steakhouse with 7.5%. Customers were drawn to Olive Garden's, quote, never-ending pasta bowl promotion, which I have experienced myself, which started and ended earlier this year, and Longhorn's affordable prices, but they shied away from Darden's pricier chains like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Mark, what do you make of some chains doing particularly well, some not doing particularly well? Even you and I talked about Fridays a few weeks back and how they're not swinging it, but Olive Garden seems to be doing just fine.
Yeah, it's really odd, actually, because the very simple explanation for it is just people like bargains, and they want bargains, especially over these last couple of years. Well, there's been rampant inflation, particularly with food. And of course, that's showing up with Longhorn Steakhouse and Olive Garden, as you mentioned, doing better than, for instance, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. However, Fridays, big trouble. Red Lobster was in huge trouble. And they did one of those same, like, all you can eat giveaways, similar to the Never Ending Pasta Bowl.
It was.
I think it was with their shrimp, which is a more expensive commodity than grain for pasta, I suppose.
Sure.
So maybe that's where that backfired. So I just think it's vibes. Yeah. At the end of the day, some people still want to go to Olive Garden who don't want to go to TGI Fridays anymore. Mm-hmm. It's just this consumer preference thing that you really can't just attribute solely to dollars on a balance sheet or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it must be just some brand affinity as well, because as we all know, Rainforest Cafe is doing pretty well itself as well, too.
Yeah.
So when you look at these other companies like Red Lobster trying to kind of get out of the hole, post-pandemic, we're very much seeing an imbalance in the fast food restaurant industry here, especially with like McDonald's, Burger King prices increasing and people looking for a good deal, which is pretty much at the core of it, I think, why these things are doing well.
Yeah.
And finally, smart ring maker Aura just closed a $200 million funding round, bringing in the big bucks and bringing its company's valuation to $5.2 billion. The company said it will use the money to expand its product lineup, support its science, AI, and product development, and explore some acquisitions. So more on that front coming soon, I'm sure.
Hey everybody, it's your host, John Weigell. If you love the insights HubSpot brings to your podcast feed, then you're going to love Marketplace Tech. This daily podcast keeps you up to speed about the latest in tech news and what it all means for the economy. With stories about AI regulation, the fight against misinformation, and the latest in crypto, Marketplace Tech is essential listening to understand the business behind innovation. Listen to Marketplace Tech wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, so onto the main story today. We've spoken about it before in numerous cases, but betting is going absolutely crazy in 2024 with enhanced sports betting options, the election, and crypto running wild everywhere this year was certainly a huge win for the gambling industry. So Mark, can you tell us a bit about what the betting landscape looks like currently?
Well, it looks really good if you're in the sort of sports gambling business, to be sure. Depending on kind of what numbers you're looking at, I think the American Gaming Association, according to Business Insider, is estimating that around half, 55% of adults have participated in some type of gambling this year. Yeah, I've seen some other estimates where it's maybe closer to 33%. Mm-hmm. But either way, you're talking about a huge swath of Americans who are now gambling on sports. The total amount that's going to be wagered this year is probably going to be around $150 billion, wow, which is up around 20% from last year. In the NFL, this season alone, the American Gaming Association expects that it's going to be around $35 billion just for the NFL season. So that's the biggest chunk of where all of it's coming from.
Wow.
But it's especially wild to think of all this because a dozen years ago, there was no sports gambling except for Nevada, basically.
Yeah.
And the reason why we've had this increase in sports gambling, I think there's now 36 or so states that have legalized it, plus Washington, D.C. And it was all because of New Jersey. They wanted to jumpstart Atlantic City's economy because, Atlantic City had not been doing so well, in large part because, the rise of like sort of online gaming and whatever gambling. So it wasn't as much of a destination to go to Atlantic City anymore.
Sure.
There was other states that had like, gambling, whether it was on riverboats or wherever it might be. So they were like, how can we get more people to come to Atlantic City? Let's legalize sports gambling and it'll just be a huge boon for us. And it worked because they were able, it went to the Supreme Court, et cetera, because of laws that were on the books. They were able to legalize it. But now so has basically everyone else. And it's led us to the status quo that we're in.
Yeah, it really opened the floodgates because now sports betting is so widespread. And that number that you were saying, the $150 billion before, I definitely want to reiterate that $150 billion will have been bet allegedly this year on only sports.
Right.
Only sports, which is such a crazy number to talk about. And that really kind of bled out into other things, it looks like, because that $150 billion makes people go, okay, well, sports betting has become legalized in all these states and wildly popular. And you see commercials of it everywhere with like LeBron James. I see those ads everywhere. And now it's becoming a popularized thing that people do. Of course, you kind of mentioned a number of years ago, a lot of sports companies, including the NFL, frowned upon betting, really. And now they're embracing it. They're turning around and accepting all this money that's coming in for them. So now these other industries, even in politics, are getting into the betting sphere, it looks like.
Yeah, it is such an about face because like the law that the Supreme Court ended up saying, hey, we don't need this anymore, was the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act. And the biggest lobbyists for wanting that law were professional sports leagues and, the NCAA, probably even more so. And they even sued, right? The NCAA sued when New Jersey tried to legalize sports gambling in 2012. That's what led to the Supreme Court case. So they were so resistant to this, and now they're almost symbiotic with it. Mm-hmm. It's not even just like a partnership. It's literally, they're probably afraid they're going to die if they don't have gambling. And that's not that much of a stretch to say, because these sports leagues are just not the giants that they were in the 90s and the 2000s.
Sure.
The NFL less so, because they still have a really good TV presence, but decline in viewership, decline in attendance in some cases. So sports gambling is a lifeline for them because it keeps people interested.
Yeah. And gambling seems to keep people interested in a lot of things, like the election this year when people spent tens of millions of dollars on betting who would win the election. And that extended to other things like meme coins this year. Of course, your Haktua coin, your Dogecoin, all that. Mm-hmm. Extended to a lot of different outlets where people are consistently spending money on these things. And now you have a lot of gaming companies like DraftKings putting up new apps for betting, for casinos, for slot machines. So it's really becoming a catch-all for everything this year. There's even bets right now on whether the U.S. will confirm aliens exist or if Luigi Mangione, of course, the suspect of the killing of United Healthcare CEO, will plead guilty. So there could be a bet for everything now, it seems, and we're kind of going bet crazy out here.
Yeah, and I think it's only going to get even crazier. I mean, the fact that people, like you mentioned on Polymarket, can bet whether aliens will be confirmed by the US. I mean, why? Why is that on there? And why is anyone betting for it?
And when will they say yes or no to it? What is the time frame here?
Yeah, either way, gambling and sports gambling in particular, it's not going away, but it maybe should. I know there's probably some people listening who are not going to like that comment, but it has had so many adverse impacts in just a few years already. The studies have really just been coming out this year, and they've been rolling out, frankly. The Lancet Public Health Commission found that around 450 million people globally have had at least one negative consequence associated with gambling. Mm-hmm. But these ones that are really kind of more US based and into the sports gambling, there was one from Northwestern University that showed that for every dollar spent on sports gambling, households put $2 less in investment accounts. Mm-hmm. There was another one from UCLA that showed that your chances of a household going bankrupt increases by about 25% if you're an online sports gambler. And that increase is mostly concentrated among young men who live in counties where the income is a little bit lower than the median. And then finally, there was the University of Oregon study that even found that sports betting has led to a 9% increase in domestic partner violence. Mm-hmm. So these are very real consequences after just a few years of sports gambling.
Sure. I mean, and now I shudder kind of to think where this is going to end up. As next year is rolling around, of course, the NFL season continues, Super Bowl's coming up. This only seems like it could be getting worse unless regulations are kind of put in place. But I guess that is a problem for next year, this government.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were put into place before, right? I mean, there was the act that essentially banned sports gambling from, 1992 until 2018. So, right. I mean, they could come up with a new one that the Supreme Court would rule constitutional instead of this other one. So who knows?
I knew it was because of Atlantic City. I just knew in the back of my mind somewhere.
Yeah, it's because Revel Casino failed. If anyone is familiar, that was supposed to bring Atlantic City back and it didn't.
And it didn't. Oh, God. Oops.
No.
All right, that'll do it for us today, everybody. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We got a ton more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. Go get signed up at thehustle.co/email and throw us a follow on Instagram at The Hustle Daily. We will see you next week.